ready, Peter?
Yeah.
Great, let's go.
Good afternoon, and thank you for registering for this live webinar on creating strategic advantage with your supply chain. ApicsAU is Australia's premier supply chain community, offering three distinct value proposition elements. You'll see it on the screen: education, training, professional development, leadership and innovation. As part of our professional development offering, we have designed a series of complimentary live webinars to help our community develop the knowledge that they need to bridge the skill gaps in this industry. We've partnered with SYSPRO, one of our corporate partners, using this technology to bring new possibilities that this technology can offer to our members. Just before we commence the webinar, there's a few housekeeping matters. The chat box on the bottom, located in the toolbox on the bottom of your screen, you'll see that right now. You can click on that and type a question whenever you like throughout the webinar. Just to make sure that you can hear me and know that the chat box is working, please click on the box and type in something like hello. See, I can see a number of responses. So that's how easy it is to ask a question. You can type questions throughout the webinar while the speakers are on. All the questions that you will be posting there will be posted to our website in a supply chain strategy special interest group, which will allow you to view all the questions asked this afternoon. You'll be able to continue the conversations within that forum on an ongoing basis and receive all the resources from today also through that. If you haven't already joined this forum on our website, please type in yes in the chat box and we will join you in this forum for free. Okay, so we'll take those yeses, thank you. Our first speaker is Tony Broughton. Tony had more than 20 years experience in operations. He specializes in assisting businesses in all industry types and sizes by helping them to save time, reduce costs, and increase productivity by eliminating non-value adding activity and give their supply chains better visibility. Passionate about supply chain improvement, Tony is the Managing Director of Chain Squared, a successful consulting firm which has helped smaller companies establish new supply chains and large multinationals create end-to-end supply chain excellence. Chain Squared is a corporate partner of ApicsAU, and in that context, Tony is the speaker today and is going to share strategies for a world-class supply chain. We are looking forward to learning how we can create a competitive advantage for our organizations. Tony, over to you.
Thanks very much, Peter, and hello everybody. It's great to be with you today. My name's Tony Broughton, and as Peter said, I'm the Managing Director and founder of Chain Squared. And it's great to talk to you today about supply chain strategy. As Peter said, please send your questions through. It would be great to get a bit of interaction, and I'll take as many questions as I can at the end of my segment. And if I can't take them, then we'll take them offline and respond to you. If you haven't got a question, maybe you want to give us a comment, that's fine as well. If you haven't got questions or comments, then maybe you can send in a good joke. This is also fine. But, it's quite a large group on the line today, and I can see people are still joining, so we'll do our best to get through questions. So let's talk about supply chain strategy. And I think before we can do that, the first thing you need to be thinking about is what's your business strategy. And the key point that I'd like to make starting out on this topic is that supply chain strategy really needs to follow corporate strategy. Supply chains don't exist in isolation. They exist to support a business in meeting the needs of its customers. So the starting point really is a question which is, what is your business strategy? And if you're working in supply chain and operations more broadly, you need to know the answer to that question. What is your business strategy, and what does your business want from the supply chain? What's it need from the supply chain? Is the business all about maximizing margin? Is it about market growth and expanding into new territories? Is it about new product launches and very quickly developing new products and getting them onto the market? Or is it about product choice and customers being able to customize products at their will? So these are all quite different requirements. And it's said that there's something like 5 or 6 different supply chain archetypes. And each of those archetypes will meet various of those business needs in greater or lesser ways. So your supply chain might be designed to be very efficient. It might be designed to be fast. It might be a continuous flow supply chain, which is all about reducing cost and having stability. It might be designed to be very agile, or it might be designed to be very flexible. So the important point here is around alignment and getting clear on the corporate strategy before you put a single word on a page about your supply chain strategy. So with that said, and with quite a diverse audience on the line today, what I've done is pulled together what I believe are 5 quite universal supply chain strategies that I think apply, let's say, in the majority of settings, perhaps not all, but in the majority. So let's get straight into those. There's 5 strategies or 5 levers for success that we believe will lead to very high performing supply chains that create strategic advantage. So the first is synchronization. Synchronizing a supply chain for continuous flow. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I use the relay race analogy, often relay races are won or lost during that critical transition, that handover of the baton from one runner to the next. And obviously that's quite a critical moment in any relay race. Supply chains or supply networks are pretty much like a relay race. There's materials and information moving down and sometimes back up the supply chain and through the network. And I think the success of many supply chains rests in how well those transitions are managed. I'll give you a couple of examples. An example that I remember, a couple of factories that were in my network back in my time with AstraZeneca. And one factory had done a lot of work to reduce its batch sizes and improve and increase its cycle time. So it had moved to weekly deliveries. And then it was shipping that product on a weekly basis downstream to another factory. But that factory was completely oblivious to the work that upstream factory had done. And they were adding some value to that product or that material and then shipping out monthly. So the net effect of all of that effort of that upstream factory, months and months of probably years of work to shorten their lead times and reduce their changeovers and so on, was really misspent effort because the net effect on the total supply chain was 0. Another example I remember was a manufacturer shipping into a regional distribution depot in Europe. They weren't aware that there was a shipment date of a Wednesday, but their product was arriving in the depot every Thursday. So their product was always sitting around for a week when it really didn't need to be. So again, this lack of synchronization can lead to a lot of unnecessary waste. So the solution to this is obviously to focus on those transitions and those handoffs, if you like, and to reduce the number of handoffs in your network. And any opportunity you have to reduce network complexity and simplify the network will certainly help. And the other thing you should look at is try to increase the visibility of your supply chain end to end, and that will help you spot this waste or this white noise that we find in supply chains. So that's the first strategy. The second is related to that, and it's the area of collaboration. What we find in supply chains is there's often a lot of latent potential in supply chains that's not being exploited because of a lack of collaboration between partners, and nodes within a network. Now, we all know collaboration is great. It sounds great. It's can be a bit of a buzzword, but collaboration is really important in a supply chain setting. If I reflect back on traditional lean programs in the 80s and 90s, they were very much focused on factories and those manufacturing locations. And what I saw as a result was this creation of islands of excellence, fantastically efficient factories, but a little bit like a Ferrari in traffic, okay? And so that's one phenomenon that I've seen and that you've probably all seen as well. The other phenomenon that I see is where suppliers and partners in a network aren't in fact seen as suppliers, as partners, but they're almost seen as the enemy. And they're seen as an entity to negotiate with and to beat the price down. And so suppliers are often, in less mature supply chains at least, they're often kept at arm's length. And for both of those reasons, there's a lot of untapped potential by bringing suppliers together, by treating suppliers as trusted partners. There's often enormous potential and opportunity and improvement that can be unleashed. I remember an example, quite by accident, we discovered that through a set of circumstances, the supplier to us had put on a whole extra shift just so that they could meet our 6 a.m. delivery requirement the next day. Now, we didn't actually care so much that it was 6 a.m. Somebody had said, yeah, we'd like the product to come at 6 a.m. each day, but 7 a.m. would have been fine. But the supplier decided that they would go and put on an extra shift so that they could meet that 6 a.m. deadline, which was completely unnecessary in a lot of ways. So it's a simple little example where a lack of collaboration can lead to that sort of waste. So I'd ask you the question, how many innovations have you received from your suppliers in the last few months? And how many of those are exclusive to you? Have you become a partner? Have you become a customer of choice for your suppliers? How many ideas have your suppliers generated perhaps for the next generation of your product? Have you got your suppliers working with you on the next generation of product, for example? So this is a really important point, to treat your suppliers as partners, become a customer of choice, and hold collaboration events. When I was a VP in the UK, I remember my team holding these 2-day collaboration events where they'd get the suppliers in together and not just working with us as a customer, but working with each other. And amazing outcomes from those events usually. Here's another question for you. Are your suppliers exploring new technologies with you? New ways of doing business? Are you running experiments together? Do your suppliers have the permission to take some risks and to try some different things and maybe make some mistakes without putting their contract at risk with you? You know, over time, you should be working towards fostering deep collaborative relationships with your suppliers up and down the supply chain. So I'm going to move on to the third strategy, and that is around segmentation. This one I think is quite well known, but we need to touch on it. Any supply chain discussion, we have to talk about segmentation. This is about segmenting your customers. This is essentially, don't treat all of your customers the same, because they're not the same. They have different needs, they have different wants. Some of them want rapid delivery. Some of them want 100% availability of product every time. Certainly my background in pharmaceuticals, that was the case. You know, some of our products were life-saving and they needed to be on the shelf every day, no matter what. The cost was very much a secondary question. Maybe your supply chain needs to deliver the lowest possible price. Maybe range and choice is really important, or maybe the ability to return the product if it's wrong or if you don't like it. Maybe that's what's important. So it's a fairly basic concept. You just need to take some time to segment your customers and put them into different categories. And there's no golden rules about how to do this. But if you don't do this, what you're going to end up with is all of your customers getting the same thing, and they're probably all going to get an average experience. So it'll be very difficult to wow all of your customers if you're just delivering an average service across the board. So sit down, maybe with your commercial teams, and maybe with your sales and marketing guys, and really understand your customers. And like I said, there's no golden rules here. You can segment them by strategic importance, perhaps. Are some customers much more important strategically than others? You could segment them by geography, by channel, by customer service requirement, availability, etc. And then going about, if you like, setting up subcategories of your supply chains that deliver on those specific requirements. And in that way, you're much more likely to delight your customers across the board. So that's segmentation. And like I said, not a new concept, but an important one. The fourth one's an interesting one, and this is not unique to supply chain. I think this is important to business generally. This is about standardization, and it's about removing variation. So I have a bit of a mantra in supply chains. I call it the 3 V's, and that is to increase velocity of a supply chain, because that certainly should be one of the key goals of any supply chain is for the supply chain to move quickly. To increase velocity, so that's the first V, velocity, one needs to increase visibility of the supply chain and reduce variation. So they're the second and third V's. So to increase velocity, need to increase visibility and reduce variation. If you look at the background image on this slide, you should be able to see a target with a bunch of bullet holes. And one could generalize and say that if you took the average of all of those bullet holes, it's probably pretty close to on target. And yet, none of those bullets hit the target. And this is the nub of the issue. The perils of using averages was absolutely widespread practice across all industries and all businesses and all functions within businesses is to report on what was our average customer service last month, what was our average lead time, what was our average DIFOT, what was our average customer engagement rate, etc. The problem with averages is that it masks significant opportunity, and any of you familiar with even basic Six Sigma concepts would understand this pretty well. The significant value that lies in the outer 10%, the upper and lower 10% of performance. So the solution to this is to start measuring and visualizing variation. It sounds simple. It is simple. It just takes a different mindset to measure the performance of your supply chain differently. And the beauty of measuring variation is you can now start to see the spread of your performance, be that daily, weekly, or monthly. And you can start setting some internal benchmarks. So you can achieve that upper quartile performance sometimes. So what have we got to do to achieve that upper quartile performance all of the time? And so starting to measure point performance, and here's a chart that might exemplify that point. So on the tail end of this normal distribution curve, you've got lost opportunity, waste, cost, etc., other forms of losses. And then on the high end, you've got, how the hell did we do that? How did that happen? Was that random, or did we do something differently? So really analysing the point causes of high and low performance, those outliers, can be very insightful to what's going on in your supply chain. And it just requires a different measurement practice and a different measurement mindset. So really encourage you to think about that. One of the impacts of variation in the supply chain that you're probably all familiar with is known as the bullwhip effect. And I put this slide up just to exemplify this again. A very small variation, almost undetectable at the customer level, will get amplified as you work your way back up through the supply chain, through distribution, through warehousing, through manufacturing, and through the suppliers. So, I used to marvel at how pharmaceutical products, which weren't seasonal at all and had very stable market demand, and yet we were up and down and all over the place sometimes in our manufacturing plants. And what that's about variation. It's that variation getting amplified through the supply chain. So focus on variation and seek it out and eliminate it wherever you can. So that's that point. It's the last one for me is the most important one, and that's why I've left it to last. For me, supply chains are all about people, and they're all about engaging and inspiring people towards a common purpose. When I come across poor performing supply chains, dysfunctional supply chains that are in crisis, I can tell you without fail, every time there is a strong leadership dimension to that problem. It may not be apparent on the surface. It may take some digging, but you dig into these problems and you'll see leadership problems. You'll see engagement problems. You'll see a lack of strategic direction, a lack of clear communication, changing priorities, etc. All forms of poor leadership. And so, you know, I couldn't finish a discussion about supply chain strategy and about supply chain performance without talking to you about leadership, about how important it is. I know I don't need to convince you of it, but you know, leadership is an absolutely critical element of the success of any supply chain. Now, I know we've got quite a wide audience on the line, and you know, some people in very senior positions and some in more junior positions. But I'd really encourage you to think about leadership not as a position, not as a title, but as a way of thinking, as a way of being, and as a mindset. And you know, when I talk to businesses and we're working through supply chain issues, you know, I'm never silent about the leadership aspect. I encourage people to lead from wherever they are, whatever role they're in. Every one of us has an opportunity to, even in a small way, to lead and inspire our colleagues, our peers, and to lead in the way we want to be led. That can start by, you know, some self-development, some self-reflection, asking for feedback, and working on ourselves as leaders, because leadership is a skill. It can be learned. I don't believe we're born leaders. I believe leadership can be developed over time, and acumen can be developed. But it does take work, and the first step really is that seeking feedback and making a decision to, you know, develop yourself as a leader. So that's the fifth strategy, and as I said, probably the most important one in my mind. So they're the 5 strategies. If I can recap: synchronizing your supply chain to achieve continuous flow, collaboration across your supply network to maximize the potential that's stored and often hidden within the network, segmenting your customers to make sure you're giving each customer what they want, nothing more, nothing less, standardizing your business processes and standardizing performance, and by finding and removing sources of variation, and the last, you know, inspiring those people around you and being the best leader you can possibly be every day. So they're the 5 strategies. I hope you find those helpful. I'm now going to look to see if there are questions. I see there are a few questions here. To what extent should information be shared with partners? And here's another one. Yes, with all competition, you can't just go on sharing all of your plans. Yeah, this is a fairly common, I guess, concern that people have, and I think this is in relation to collaborating with your suppliers. Yeah, this doesn't happen overnight. If you're starting from a low starting point, you know, obviously you've got to build trust over time with your suppliers, and you've got to build that relationship. So I appreciate that sometimes that will mean exchanging sensitive information. You've just got to work away to be able to do that. My encouragement would be actually, oftentimes what we think is really sensitive information is perhaps not as sensitive as we think it is. That's number one. So, you know, you need to kind of dismiss some perceptions or assumptions, and oftentimes it's both parties thinking the other party won't want to share the information that prevents the engagement in the first place. So sit down, have a discussion with your key suppliers, and say, hey, this is the direction we like to go. You know, what do you think? And you might be surprised, and hopefully you'll be surprised by the response you get. And a couple of comments here from people. Yes, sharing goes a long way, but you can't go on sharing all of your plans. Sure, I think there's a balance. It's going to be different for different businesses, but glad to see that some people are thinking about that. So that's great. So again, if there are any other questions, just shoot them through, and we'll take them later as we go through. I think there might be just one more slide for me to cover. Yeah, so this is just quickly a little bit about Supply Chain Squared, and then I'm going to hand back to Peter. So we're a supply chain and manufacturing consultancy practice based in Sydney, but we work right across Australia, Asia Pacific, and more recently Europe. We work on 3 dimensions of supply chain and operations. On the strategy dimension, so we help companies establish new supply chains, and that's often startup companies, or redesign the supply chains, or set supply chain strategy more broadly. Then we work on the execution dimension, which is around operational excellence and lean and supply chain intelligence. And then the third area that we've moved into more recently is education and professional development. We're launching a professional development program called the Operations Academy. So that's a little bit about us, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. There are a couple more questions coming through. And I'm going to hand back to Peter because I think I'm out of time, and I will get back to those questions offline for you. So thank you, and back to you, Peter.
Thank you, Tony. And as we've just heard from Tony, he's emphasizing the fact that the supply chain is all about people, leading change, engaging others to embrace change, creating common purpose to work towards that change. In this context, we have just, I'm happy to announce we just started a series on lean leadership, which we will do in collaboration with Tony and his company, Supply Chain Squared. First, as you will see on the screen, the first one-day workshop kicks off in Melbourne on the 3rd of May and on Sydney on the 4th of May. So you will soon find information on how to register for these workshops. But we believe this will be make a significant contribution to the demand for leadership and leadership workshops in the industry. The ApicsAU courses offer practical outcomes. They're offered by practitioners for practitioners. Discussions, techniques, and self-assessments from this workshop will be able to be implemented to workshops every day. You can see the outcomes of this workshop coming. Basically answer the question, can one person really shape the performance of an organization? There's a number of things on the slide. You can see, discover how personal priorities, habits, and routines can impact on an organization. Explore purpose, critical reference questions, unlocking passion in your workforce. Learn how to get everyone on the same page. That's critical. I just add a comment myself in there. Goal deployment and catch-ball techniques. Here, the best practices from embedding and sustaining lean. Complete a self-assessment to determine your organization's lean maturity. That'll be part of the workshop. And then leave with a clear personal implementation plan. There's on the screen, you'll see our webpage address and an email for the inquiries in this regard. Is the information. If you are interested in receiving information right now, you can type info in the chat box and we will follow that up. Again, there's the web address and the inquiries. So we're glad to say that this will be the beginning of a series of workshops that we will be doing with Tony. Okay, then our next presentation is by Stephen Matthews, Business Development Manager at SYSPRO. Stephen is an ERP professional, having worked in business development roles in the past 15 years. In his area of disruptive technology, Stephen knows the value of ERP systems to assist customers to maintain the requisite competitive edge. Today, Stephen will be presenting on the differences between supply chain and logistics, and how effective planning and forecasting will make your supply chain a success. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Peter, and good afternoon all, and thank you for your participation in this webinar today. Here's my definition of supply chain as an ERP professional. A supply chain is a linked set of resources and processes that begins with the sourcing of raw material and extends through to the delivery of end items to the final customer. A supply chain comprises vendors, manufacturing facilities, logistics providers, internal distribution centres, distributors and wholesalers. Every business is part of one or more supply chains and has a role to play in each of them. How a business plays its role in the supply chain has a direct impact on the efficiency of the business and the supply of goods to the final customer. Understanding the dynamics of how a business participates in a supply chain is an ever-growing requirement of success in business today. Businesses that are able to build and participate in strong supply chains have a substantial competitive advantage over those that do not. Supply chain and logistics. The terms are often used interchangeably, and as a result, many people believe that they are just different words for the same thing. But this isn't the case. There is a difference. Logistics typically refers to activities that happen inside or between organisations in order to move items from one point to another. Logistics is a very old term, firstly used in the military for the maintenance, storage and transportation of army personnel and goods. With the evolution of the concept of supply chain management, this term is used in many spheres, not specifically in the military. It's been said that supply chain management is an addition to logistics management, and that supply chain management comprises logistics. Both are inseparable. They do not contradict, but supplement each other. Supply chain management helps logistics to be in touch with and interact with the transportation, storage and distribution functions, the management processes which integrate the movement of goods, services, information and capital, commencing with the sourcing of raw material until it reaches the end consumer, is known as logistics management. Today, the objective behind this process is to provide the right product with the right quality, at the right time, in the right place, at the right price to the ultimate customer. Not so easy, I'm sure you'll agree. These logistic activities are divided into two broad categories, being inbound logistics, the activities concerned with the procurement of material, handling, storage and transport, and outbound logistics, those activities concerned with collection, maintenance and distribution to the final consumer. Apart from these, other activities can include warehousing, protective packing, order fulfillment and stock control. All of it designed to maintain equilibrium between demand and supply. Businesses within the logistics sector face huge pressures to keep costs down and maximise capacity, all the while meeting critical customer deadlines. It's therefore vital that logistics operators gain transparency over every aspect of their business, from efficient planning, warehouse management, transportation and costings, thereby making their software and network investments a critical resource. It's obvious that logistics operators require reliable information systems, allowing them to access business information while remaining agile when responding to changing market demands. Hence the need for their systems solution provider to adapt to these ever-changing demands. Good logistics information solutions will provide full traceability over every facet of the logistics operation, from effective warehouse management to storage, comprehensive forecasting of inventory levels, capacity requirements, and available resources, all of it in real time. For those logistics businesses which operate over multiple sites, which is now common practice, their technology must offer acceptable, reliable connectivity across most, if not all, mobile devices, thereby providing management teams with the ability to access relevant data and advanced traceability. The ERP software industry has evolved to meet the information needs of the logistics industry, the needs in transport, inventory, and warehousing. In addition to warehouse management, an ERP system affords businesses within the logistics sector advanced functionality long after goods have left the warehouse. Through effective inventory management, operators are able to create and execute optimized transport plans, whereby shipments are consolidated by delivery, by client, or by order. Such shipments can then be monitored using GPS technology throughout every stage of transportation, ensuring products are delivered on time and on budget. For so many logistics operators, where no job is too big and no time frame too short, many supply chain operators are required to provide around-the-clock services to their customers. It's vital that logistics operators are supported, therefore, by effective ERP software. Many businesses do still own their supply chains, but most businesses today choose to outsource as many of the functions of supply chain as possible. Today's fast-moving markets require a flexible response with resulting lower costs and higher efficiencies. Vertical integration has given way to virtual integration. Increasingly, businesses now focus on their core competencies and partner with other businesses to create responsive supply chains. While logistics has a focus on transportation activities such as procurement, distribution, maintenance, and inventory, supply chain management incorporates all of the logistic activities and extends today to include activities such as marketing, sales, new product development, finance, and customer service. Today, supply chain ecosystems are diverse in nature. Each has its own unique attributes and operating challenges. However, the basic issues remain much the same, allowing us to recognise a basic pattern of decision-making. Whether collectively or individually, business managers must make decisions in 5 key areas. They being production, deciding what to produce, how much and when; inventory, deciding what to stock at each stage of the supply chain, how much to stock and in what form; location, deciding where to produce and store inventory; transportation, deciding how to move inventory from one location to another; and finally, information, deciding what information to collect, how much, and what to share with others in the supply chain. Examining now the responsiveness versus efficiency equation. In production, decisions are centred on establishing and maintaining a balance between responsiveness and efficiency. Production facilities that have capacity surplus to requirement are better able to respond to changes in demand than those that don't. Yet one cannot have capacity without cost. Factory or warehouse capacity isn't cheap, it carries ongoing cost, and when not in use doesn't generate revenue. And as a result, greater excess capacity adds to costs and makes the operation less efficient. As with production facilities, storage facilities can also be built to accommodate different approaches. In general, there are 3 main storage approaches. Firstly, the stock keeping unit. It involves keeping and storing all products of a given type together in the same place. This makes optimal use of storage space, but makes the job of picking and packing more difficult. In job lot storage, in this approach, different products related to the needs of a job are stored together. Job lot storage doesn't make optimal use of storage space, but dramatically improves picking and packing. And thirdly, cross-docking. In this approach, product is not actually kept in the facility for storage. arriving stock is not destined for storage. The cross-docking station is merely a transitory point to receive large loads in a single location and assemble customer orders that will be distributed to multiple locations. Who is the master of cross-docking, you're wondering? Well, we think we know the answer to that one. Looking at inventory, holding large amounts of inventory allows a company or an entire supply chain to be very responsive to fluctuation in customer demand. However, the production and storage of inventory are costs, and to achieve high levels of efficiency, costs of inventory must be kept to a minimum. The geographical location of facilities is an important factor to consider in the responsiveness and efficiency equation of the supply chain. The compromise here is the decision whether to centralise activities in fewer locations to gain economies of scale, or to decentralise activities in many locations close to customers and suppliers in order to be more responsive. Transport costs in a supply chain can equal up to 1/3 of the total operating cost. Transport decisions, therefore, not only impact response and efficiency, but can translate to the cost of the product as it traverses the supply chain. Information is used for two purposes in supply chain decision making. Firstly, in managing activities. Information is pivotal for decision making related to the production, inventory, location, and transport mechanisms in the supply chain. This information in turn enables management to decide on production schedules, inventory levels, transport routes, and stocking locations. Enter again the ERP software system. Needless to say, effective planning and forecasting makes a huge difference. But for that, we need accurate historical data to anticipate future demand. This information is used to make forecasts that can be used as a guide for setting production schedules and timetables for a given period. This information is used for planning decisions, some of which are strategic, such as whether or not to build new facilities or enter a new market, and some of which is tactical, such as whether to launch a new product. As with other supply chain drivers, there is the trade-off between efficiency and responsiveness. Good information is valuable, which lies at the heart of the investment in any enterprise information solution. In addition to this cost, businesses must also make decisions related to how much information they share with other businesses. Sharing information with other information partners increases the overall efficiency of the supply chain. However, the more information that's shared, the greater the risk that the information may fall into the hands of a competitor. Finally, I've provided a summary table which shows the differences between logistics and supply chain and the variables that need to be addressed to make your supply chain a success. There endeth the lesson, and thank you for your attention. Goodbye.
Thank you, Stephen. We hope you've enjoyed this webinar this afternoon. May I encourage you to visit our website and view the career development offerings that ApicsAU has to offer. And keep in touch. We will have this on a regular basis. Thank you for attending.